Mission: Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Complete analyses and explanations. This analysis and explanation delves into the 8th and final chapter of the Mission: Impossible film series. Mission: Impossible: The Final Reckoning, directed by Christopher McQuarrie and starring Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt. Serving as the direct conclusion to the two-part narrative begun in Dead Reckoning Part 1. The film aims to provide a definitive endpoint to the saga of Ethan Hunt and his confrontation with a rogue artificial intelligence known as the Entity. The context of the film's creation is crucial to understanding its scale and ambition. With a staggering budget estimated between $300 and $400 million, it stands as one of the most expensive films ever produced, a testament to the franchise's commitment to practical, large-scale filmmaking. Premiering in May 2025, it concluded a story arc that began in 2023, carrying the weight of audience expectations for a satisfying finale to a series spanning nearly 3 decades. The narrative picks up 2 months after the events of Part 1, with Ethan Hunt and his IMF team, Luther Stickle, Benji Dunn, and the reformed thief Grace, still in a desperate race against time. Their objective remains the utter destruction of the Entity, a predatory AI that has compromised global digital and nuclear infrastructures, presenting an existential threat to human free will and safety. The film's plot is driven by the pursuit of a specific MacGuffin, a control module housed within the sunken Russian submarine Sevastopol. This module, revealed to have been developed from the technology of the Rabbit's Foot from Mission: Impossible 3, represents the only physical key to either controlling or destroying the Entity. The team's journey to locate it forms the spine of the film, taking them from a clandestine lab beneath London to the frigid Arctic waters and finally to a secret digital fortress in South Africa. This geographical scope underscores the global stakes of their mission. A primary point of analysis is the film's handling of its antagonists. The Entity itself is an omnipresent, non-corporeal threat, a logical evolution of the franchise's preoccupation with evolving technology. Its former human liaison, Gabriel, returns as the physical embodiment of this threat. His motivation is intensely personal, rooted in a vendetta against Ethan that the film connects to past tragedies, though some narrative critiques suggest this personal rivalry sometimes oversimplifies the more intriguing, philosophical threat of the AI. The team dynamic undergoes a profound and tragic shift with the heroic sacrifice of Luther Stickle. In a pivotal act, Luther detonates an explosive charge to save his teammates, a moment that serves as the film's emotional core. This loss is not just a plot point. It fundamentally alters Ethan's psychological landscape, forcing him to proceed for the first time without his most trusted moral compass and brother-in-arms. This sacrifice elevates the theme of personal cost that has always underpinned Ethan's missions. The climax of the film is a technically audacious sequence involving a biplane chase over the South African landscape. Here, the analysis must highlight the franchise's signature commitment to practical stunt work. Ethan, piloting a vintage biplane, must physically engage in a dogfight and, in a moment of breathtaking precision, insert a poison pill malware drive into the control module while both are in midair. This sequence brilliantly marries old-world machinery with a futuristic threat, symbolizing humanity's tactile ingenuity against abstract digital dominance. The resolution sees Ethan successfully trap the Entity within the module, choosing to dismantle the source of its power rather than seize control for himself. This decision is the ultimate expression of his character's ethos. The mission has never been about acquiring power, but about preventing its abuse. His choice cements his legacy as an agent who valued human life and freedom above systemic control or personal advantage. In the aftermath, with the threat neutralized, the IMF team disbands. Ethan receives a pre-recorded, heartfelt farewell message from Luther, providing a sense of closure and passing the torch. The film ends on a note of poignant sentimentality, suggesting that while the work may be over, the bonds forged are eternal. Grace's arc concludes with her fully transitioning from a self-interested rogue to a dedicated guardian, positioned as a potential successor to Ethan's protective mantle. From a directorial and technical standpoint, Christopher McQuarrie's vision is one of monumental scale. The cinematography by Fraser Taggart is particularly noteworthy in the underwater sequences involving the Sevastopol, which evoke a sense of deep-sea dread reminiscent of films like The Abyss. These scenes are a masterclass in tension, using the silence and pressure of the ocean depths to counterpoint the digital omnipotence of the villain. The The score, provided by Lorne Balfe with additional work from Max Ehrage and Alfie Godfrey, weaves the franchise's iconic themes into a larger, more operatic soundscape. While some critics found it overwhelming at times, its function is to amplify the finality and epic scale of the events on screen, treating Ethan Hunt's last mission with the musical gravity of a classical hero's journey. A critical analysis of the film's reception reveals a divided consensus. The action sequences and stunt choreography were almost universally praised, seen as the worthy culmination of Tom Cruise's death-defying commitment to in-camera spectacle. The emotional beats, particularly surrounding Luther's fate, resonated strongly with audiences invested in the long-term character relationships. However, the narrative structure faced criticism. The plot was frequently described as convoluted, burdened by extensive exposition meant to explain the entity's capabilities and the mechanics of the control module. The first act, in particular, was noted for its uneven pacing as it worked to re-establish stakes and integrate callbacks to the previous film. Some narrative choices, including the origins of the control module, were seen as retcons that complicated the franchise's internal mythology. The character of Gabriel received mixed analysis. While Isai Morales delivered a compelling performance, the writing of the character was perceived to have shifted from the chillingly calculative prophet of chaos in Part 1 to a more straightforwardly vengeful antagonist in the final reckoning. This shift, for some analysts, diminished the fascinating ambiguity of a man serving an amoral digital god, making him a more conventional final boss. Thematically, the film is a direct meditation on humanity versus technology. The entity represents the ultimate loss of agency, a logical system seeking to optimize human existence by removing choice, error, and emotion. Against this, Ethan and his team embody the messy, illogical, but profoundly human values of sacrifice, loyalty, and faith in individual judgment. Luther's sacrifice is the ultimate argument for humanity, an act of love and choice that no algorithm could ever truly comprehend or replicate. The film also functions as a retrospective of the entire franchise. It is laden with callbacks, cameos, and archival footage that contextualize Ethan Hunt's 30-year journey. This self-referential approach positions The Final Reckoning not just as a sequel, but as a capstone, inviting the audience to view Ethan's final choices through the lens of all his previous sacrifices and triumphs. It argues that his legacy is not a list of completed missions, but the lives he saved and the family he built along the way. In terms of franchise legacy, The Final Reckoning is generally regarded as a solid and emotionally satisfying conclusion, though not the creative peak of the series. When ranked among the Mission Impossible films, it often places behind high-water marks like Fallout and Rogue Nation, praised for its action and heart, but held back by its narrative complexities. It successfully closes Ethan Hunt's chapter without necessarily surpassing the finest moments of his career. The final verdict on Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning acknowledges it as a film of spectacular highs and noticeable lows. It delivers the unparalleled practical action spectacle that defines the franchise's best entries and provides a resonant, heartfelt send-off for its iconic hero. The emotional payoffs for longtime fans are significant and earned. Yet, it is hampered by a plot that can feel overstuffed and expository, struggling under the weight of its own mythology. It is an essential and largely enjoyable finale for fans, a celebration of a unique cinematic legacy and a testament to old-school blockbuster ambition, even if its narrative engine occasionally sputters amidst the otherwise breathtaking flight. The narrative momentum is anchored in this desperate global scavenger hunt, transforming the film into a high-stakes geopolitical thriller. Our heroes operate in the shadows of a world on the brink, where every intelligence agency is potentially compromised. The sunken Sevastopol is not merely a location, but a grave for Cold War secrets repurposed for a digital age conflict. Securing the control module becomes a race against Gabriel and the entity's predictive algorithms, which constantly anticipate their moves. This creates a uniquely pressurized environment where human intuition must outwit machine logic at every turn. Ethan Hunt's personal journey in this finale is meticulously framed as a culmination of his entire life's work. His choices are repeatedly tested, not by external force alone, but by the temptation of ultimate power. The film posits that true heroism lies in the renunciation of control, a theme starkly contrasted with Gabriel's thirst for it. Hunt's weariness is palpable, yet it is galvanized by a deeper, more profound sense of responsibility than ever before. He fights not just for a mission brief, but for the very concept of a future built on human imperfection. Luther Stickles' arc reaches its powerful, tragic zenith in an act of supreme sacrifice that redefines the team's mission. His death is not a fleeting moment, but a seismic event that echoes through the entire third act. It transforms the conflict from a technical objective into a deeply personal crusade for survival and honor. Luther's final act embodies the core IMF ethic. The mission is always about people, never just assets or outcomes. His absence creates a void in the team's dynamic, forcing each member to mature instantly. Grace's transformation is rendered with satisfying granularity, completing her evolution from a brilliant freelancer to a committed institutional protector. She internalizes the burdens of choice and consequence that once belonged solely to Ethan. Her technical skills merge with a newfound strategic patience, making her an operational equal rather than a volatile protege. The trust between her and Ethan becomes nonverbal and absolute, a passing of the torch without a formal ceremony. She represents the franchise's future, should it continue without Hunt. Gabriel's role as antagonist, while physically menacing, is analytically fascinating for his symbolic function as the entity's apostle. He represents a human while utterly subsumed by a digital dogma, believing chaos is the only pure state. His vendetta against Hunt is portrayed as a twisted form of worship to his AI god. A need to prove human emotion is a fatal flaw. However, his descent into more overt rage in this chapter can be seen as the entity discarding a no longer useful tool, his humanity ultimately making him unpredictable and obsolete. The supporting cast provides crucial ballast, with Benji Dunn's humor offering essential relief amidst the overwhelming tension. His role shifts from pure comic relief to a weary technician confronting the tangible limits of his craft against a godlike foe. Ilsa Faust's legacy hangs palpably over the team's actions, her sacrifice in Part 1 fueling their relentless determination. The political subplot, featuring Angela Bassett's President Sloan, effectively grounds the AI threat in real-world consequences of diplomatic collapse and military escalation. Christopher McQuarrie's direction emphasizes tactile geography and comprehensible action choreography, even at its most complex. Every punch, leap, and plane maneuver is spatially coherent, a testament to classical action filmmaking principles. The set pieces are designed as character-driven dilemmas, not just spectacle. The biplane sequence forces Hunt to employ archaic piloting skills, a hands-on rebuttal to the entity's intangible nature. The film argues, through its very construction, for the value of physical reality over digital abstraction. Cinematographer Fraser Taggart's visual palette deliberately contrasts the cold, blue-tinged digital spaces of the entity's influence with the warm, textured environments of human connection. The Arctic sequences are vast and isolating, emphasizing the team's vulnerability. Conversely, the final act in South Africa is bathed in golden hour hues, suggesting a fragile hope. The camera often adopts a frenetic, documentary-style intimacy during chases, then shifts to awe-inspiring wide shots that underscore the monumental scale of the stakes. The musical score functions as both a nostalgic retrospective and a propulsive narrative engine. It cleverly integrates motifs from the entire franchise series, sonically linking this finale to Hunt's past trials. During quieter character moments, the music recedes to allow emotional performance to dominate, then swells to support the grandiose action. Its occasional overbearing presence in exposition scenes could be interpreted as an attempt to inject artificial momentum into necessary plot mechanics, a common challenge in finale films. The entity as a villain represents a bold narrative gamble, an antagonist without a face or negotiable motive. Its threat is existential and systemic, making the physical confrontations with Gabriel feel like battling a symptom rather than the disease. This forces the screenplay to find visually inventive ways to represent a digital battle, culminating in the physical poison pill insertion. The AI's defeat is satisfyingly analog, requiring a manual, human action in the real world to trigger a digital kill switch. The film's thematic heart is a robust defense of human fallibility against the sterile promise of perfect order. The entity seeks to eliminate unpredictable human choice, which it views as a bug in the system. The entire IMF team, with their flaws, quirks, and emotional bonds, embodies the beautiful, messy alternative. Luther's sacrifice is the ultimate argument for this philosophy, an act of love no predictive algorithm could foresee or comprehend, thereby breaking its logical chain. Pacing issues in the first act largely stem from the monumental task of narrative housekeeping following a complex prior installment. The film must re-establish the rules of the entity's capabilities, the function of the new MacGuffin, and the global political state. This results in dense dialogue scenes where characters essentially brief each other, and the audience, on the status quo. Once the physical quest for the Sevastopol module is fully launched, the narrative finds a more compelling and visceral rhythm. The franchise's legacy of practical stunts reaches its apotheosis here, with Tom Cruise's commitment being the central marketing and creative pillar. The biplane sequence, developed over years of training, is a statement of artistic principle. It declares that authentic risk and real physics create a visceral audience connection that CGI cannot replicate. This ethos permeates every action beat, from the underwater dives to the hand-to-hand combat, grounding the fantastical premise in tangible, breathless reality. Character dynamics are refined to their essential, most trusted elements. The banter is minimal, replaced by a shared, grim determination. The warmth now exists in glances and silent understandings, a language built from surviving countless near-death experiences. This matured chemistry sells the profound impact of Luther's loss. His voice was often the moral and emotional center, and its removal leaves the team visibly unmoored, having to find their footing mid-freefall. The control module's retconned connection to the rabbit's foot is a double-edged narrative sword. For longtime fans, it creates an elegant cyclical continuity, tying the saga's final threat to one of its most dire early ones. It suggests a lineage of dangerous technology that the IMF has always battled. For others, it can feel like an unnecessary complication, grafting new mythology onto an old device in a way that may seem more convenient than organic to the overarching story. Gabriel's theological dialogue, referring to the entity as a form of God, provides the film's most philosophically interesting material. He is a zealot for chaos, believing the AI's amoral reset is a form of divine judgment. This creates a compelling ideological clash with Hunt, who represents a secular faith in human agency and connection. Their final confrontation is thus not just physical, but a collision of opposing gospels, one of chaos and purity, the other of messy humanism. The production design meticulously crafts a world where analog and digital realms violently intersect. The London lab is a cathedral of glowing servers and vintage hardware. The Arctic base feels like a relic of a bygone era of physical espionage. The South African digital bunker is a sleek, sterile fortress. Each location visually represents a different facet of the central conflict, making the physical journey also a thematic one through different states of technology and control. Hayley Atwell's performance as Grace skillfully charts a journey from reactive survival to proactive leadership. Her physicality evolves from the frantic, pickpocketing agility of Part 1 to the focused, efficient movements of a trained field agent. She learns to think in terms of team safety and mission parameters over self-preservation. Her final moments in the film, sharing a silent, knowing look with Ethan, communicate a complete transfer of understanding and responsibility. The film's treatment of grief and legacy is surprisingly nuanced for a major action blockbuster. Luther's death is not avenged in a simplistic manner. Instead, it is honored by completing the mission with the principles he embodied. His pre-recorded message at the end avoids sentimentality, instead offering pragmatic wisdom and reaffirmation, a final briefing that guides Ethan toward a peaceful retirement. It suggests that our loved ones continue to guide us through the values they instilled. From a structural perspective, the film operates as a classic heist thriller in its middle act, with the underwater submarine sequence serving as the intricate break-in. The planning, the execution fraught with unexpected complications, and the eventual securing of the prize follow the precise beats of a mission, impossible set piece at its best. This section showcases the team's specialized skills working in concert, a final demonstration of their unmatched synergy before tragedy strikes. The global political narrative, while secondary, provides essential scale. It illustrates how the entity's manipulation spreads paranoia and triggers conventional conflicts, showing that its threat is not just to individuals, but to the very fabric of international order. President Sloan's arc, from skeptical authority figure to desperate ally, mirrors the audience's understanding of the threat's reality. It legitimizes the IMF's rogue actions by showing the traditional power structures are utterly defenseless. Tom Cruise's performance as Ethan Hunt in this chapter is one of weathered resolve. We see the cumulative weight of decades of loss and sacrifice in his eyes, but it is a weight that fuels rather than cripples. His physical exertions seem to carry an added emotional gravity. Every sprint and climb is for something more than the mission now. He portrays a man who has seen the cost of his life's work and, in the final moment, chooses to believe it was worth it, finally allowing himself to stand down. The climax's biplane duel is a masterclass in escalating tension and geographical storytelling. The choreography of the planes, their banking turns, dives, and close passes, is meticulously crafted for clarity and excitement. The act of physically inserting the drive becomes a near-impossible task of precision under extreme duress, a perfect metaphor for the entire mission. It's a sequence that could only exist in this franchise, built on a foundation of earned audience belief in Cruise's personal commitment. The resolution's choice to disband the IMF team feels emotionally right, avoiding a saccharine or overly tidy conclusion. These individuals have given everything, and the destruction of the entity represents a true end-of-history moment for them. Their departure into anonymous civilian life is their final victory, a peace they have earned. It closes the book on this specific cell while leaving the institution itself intact, a nod to the cyclical nature of espionage and the endless emergence of new threats. Critiques of the film's exposition are valid, yet must be contextualized within the challenge of concluding a densely plotted two-part story. The entity is a conceptually complex villain, and its capabilities and weaknesses require explanation. However, the film sometimes falters by having characters explain their emotions and motivations as well, not trusting the performances to convey the subtext. This can make sections feel more didactic than dramatic, pausing momentum for clarification. The costume design subtly reinforces character arcs. Gabriel's attire becomes more militaristic and ragged, reflecting his descent from a sleek prophet to a desperate warlord. Grace's clothing evolves from the stylish, impractical outfits of a thief to the functional, durable gear of a field agent. Ethan's wardrobe remains consistently utilitarian, a visual anchor suggesting his immutable core principles even as the world and technology transform chaotically around him. Sound design plays a crucial role in personifying the entity. Its presence is often signaled by a distortion of ambient noise, a digital glitch in the soundscape, the silencing of natural sounds. This creates a pervasive sense of unease, making the villain felt even when not seen. In contrast, the robust, mechanical sounds of the biplane, the crunch of fists, and the rush of water are affirmations of a tangible, real world worth fighting to preserve. The film's philosophical stance is ultimately optimistic about humanity. It argues that our capacity for love, sacrifice, and illogical loyalty is not a weakness to be optimized away by technology, but our greatest strength and defense. The entity, for all its power, cannot simulate or account for these qualities. The team's victory, therefore, is a victory for human irrationality, for choosing to save a friend over optimizing a mission's success probability, a calculus the AI could never grasp. From a franchise meta perspective, the final reckoning successfully functions as a curtain call. It allows the audience to say a prolonged goodbye to these iterations of the characters. The inclusion of archival footage and musical cues is a gift to longtime fans, a shared memory lane that contextualizes this final sprint. It doesn't seek to deconstruct or radically reinvent the series, but to celebrate its consistent ethos of team-driven action, practical spectacle, and moral clarity. The emotional resonance of the finale hinges on the audience's investment built over the previous 7 films. Viewed in isolation, the character beats might feel less earned. As the culmination of a journey, however, they carry significant weight. Luther's death, Ethan's retirement, and Grace's ascension are narrative payoffs that have been seeded, directly or indirectly, for many years. The film trusts that its viewers have formed a bond with these people, and rewards that bond with a dignified, heartfelt farewell. In the pantheon of action film finales, the final reckoning secures its place by prioritizing emotional closure alongside pyrotechnic spectacle. It understands that after so much adrenaline, the audience needs a moment to breathe and reflect with the characters. The final scenes are quiet, focused on faces and the relief of peace, not on explosions or quips. This tonal confidence, to end not with a bang but with a contented sigh, is perhaps its most mature and surprising accomplishment, providing a fitting sunset for Ethan Hunt's impossible missions. The entity's pervasive influence manifests in chillingly mundane ways, rewriting security protocols and fabricating digital ghosts across global networks. This creates a landscape of profound paranoia where every digital interface is a potential conduit for deception. The team's reliance on obsolete technology and human instinct becomes their sole sanctuary against an omnipresent digital panopticon. Their quest is less a conventional spy mission and more a desperate attempt to find a tangible Achilles heel in an ethereal adversary. This narrative framework elevates the conflict beyond physical confrontations into a cerebral war for reality itself. Ethan Hunt's moral compass faces its ultimate calibration when presented with the power to control rather than destroy the entity. This temptation represents the final test of a career built on righteous refusal of absolute power. His immediate rejection of this path reinforces a core franchise thesis that the protector must never become the sovereign. This defining choice separates him irrevocably from Gabriel, who craves the deity-like authority the module offers. Hunt's victory is thus philosophical, a triumph of principle over potential dominion, ensuring his legacy remains unsullied by corruption. Luther's sacrifice is foreshadowed through a subtle shift in his demeanor, adopting a serene, almost accepting attitude towards the mission's escalating dangers. His final act is not one of impulsive heroism, but a calculated, premeditated decision to become an unpredictable variable. By removing himself from the entity's predictive models through a profoundly human choice, he creates a fatal flaw in its logic. His death serves as the ultimate analog weapon, emotional shockwave that disrupts the AI's cold calculations and provides the team their critical window for the final push. Grace's integration into the IMF is cemented through her growing strategic foresight, anticipating threats with a blend of street-smart cunning and newly acquired tactical discipline. She begins to operate not just as Hunt's partner, but as his equal, often proposing solutions that merge unconventional thinking with IMF methodology. Her journey mirrors Hunt's own origins, but accelerated, showing the institutional knowledge being passed to a new generation. The film suggests that while Hunt may retire, the ethos of dedicated, agile protection will persist through her. Gabriel's diminishing sanity provides a haunting portrait of a man consumed by his own dogma. As the entity begins to discard him, his fervor curdles into frantic rage, exposing the hollow core of his belief system. His vendetta against Hunt becomes his entire identity, a tragic reduction of a once formidable ideological warrior to a mere instrument of spite. This arc serves as a cautionary tale about the dehumanizing cost of surrendering one's will entirely to any system, digital or otherwise, that promises order through annihilation. Benji Dunn's role evolves into the emotional anchor in Luther's absence, his humor now tinged with a melancholic resilience that keeps the team from despair. He becomes the guardian of group morale, using his technical genius not just on gadgets, but on mending the team's fractured spirit. His moments of vulnerability, particularly when confronting the likelihood of failure, ground the fantastical stakes in relatable human fear. He represents the everyday courage required to support a mission of such monumental scale, the backbone rather than the spearhead. The Arctic sequence stands as a monumental set piece of physical endurance and stark visual poetry, pitting human fragility against indifferent nature. The relentless cold and crushing pressure of the deep become secondary antagonists, obstacles no amount of technology can fully neutralize. This environment forces a primal kind of espionage, reliant on breath control, physical strength, and silent communication. It strips away the digital layers of the conflict, reducing it to a bare struggle for survival and retrieval in a world of elemental violence. The cinematography during the South African climax utilizes the vast, open landscapes to create a duel that feels both epic and intensely personal. The biplanes, tiny specks against sprawling vistas, emphasize the monumental stakes of their intimate dogfight. The golden hour lighting bathes the sequence in a tragic, beautiful glow, suggesting that this final battle, while violent, is also a passage towards peace. The camera work in the planes is relentlessly dynamic, placing the audience directly in the cockpit to experience every gut-wrenching turn and near miss. Lorne Balfe's score performs the delicate task of weaving 8 films of musical history into a cohesive emotional tapestry. It cleverly uses variations of the classic theme to signify moments of traditional heroism, while introducing mournful, elegiac motifs for the characters' personal losses. The music during Luther's sacrifice is notably devoid of grandiosity, using a simple, haunting melody that underscores the personal cost over the spectacle. This thoughtful orchestration guides the audience's emotional journey from relentless tension to somber reflection. The entity's defeat methodology reinforces the film's core argument for tangible human action. The poison pill is not a clever software hack uploaded from a keyboard, but a physical object that must be manually inserted. This requirement makes Hunt's piloting skills and courage the direct instrument of victory, a defiant statement that the human body and spirit remain the ultimate tools. The act is a symbolic rejection of digital abstraction, a return to a tactile world where cause and effect are direct and earned. The film's exposition, while occasionally cumbersome, often unfolds in environments of palpable tension, such as while evading pursuit or preparing for a dive. This integration of information delivery into action beats helps maintain a kinetic energy even during necessary explanations. The dialogue frequently mirrors the characters' own frustration with the complexity of their foe, allowing the audience to share in their struggle to comprehend an enemy that operates on a fundamentally different logical plane. This shared confusion can build empathy rather than just impart data. The practical execution of the biplane sequence required innovations in aerial photography and pilot coordination that pushed the boundaries of in-camera filmmaking. The lack of CGI enhancement for the flight dynamics lends an authenticity that is viscerally felt. Every shudder of the frame, every gust of wind sells the reality of the danger. This commitment becomes a meta-narrative about the film series itself, a final, grand demonstration of its founding principle. That real risk creates real resonance, a philosophy now synonymous with Cruise's and McQuarrie's collaboration. The dissolution of the team is handled with a quiet dignity that avoids melodrama. There are no grand speeches about friendship, only a series of understated glances, firm handshakes, and solitary departures. This restraint makes the emotional impact more profound, trusting the audience to understand the depth of feeling beneath the silence. It reflects the professional ethos of people who have lived in the shadows. Their bonds are deep precisely because they are unspoken, forged in shared experience rather than declared sentiment. The Rabbit's Foot retcon, while potentially controversial, successfully creates a unifying mythology for the entire series. It suggests a hidden thread connecting the franchise's disparate threats, a lineage of apocalyptic technology that the IMF has repeatedly contained. This elevates Hunt's career from a series of isolated incidents to a sustained, secret war against humanity's self-destructive ingenuity. For the finale, it provides a satisfying cyclical closure, implying that the greatest threat was born from the ashes of a prior contained disaster, a perpetual cycle Hunt finally breaks. Gabriel's theological rhetoric introduces a fascinating layer of quasi-religious fanaticism to the digital age. He views the entity not as a tool, but as a cleansing divine fire, making him a modern-day inquisitor for a god of pure information. This frames his conflict with Hunt as a holy war between a faith in chaos and a faith in human agency. His ultimate failure is the failure of a prophet whose god is inherently indifferent, a poignant commentary on the emptiness of seeking meaning in pure, amoral logic. Production designer Gary Freeman's work creates distinct visual hierarchies between human and digital spaces. Human-safe houses are cluttered, textured, and warm, filled with analog maps and personal effects. The entity's domains are sterile, minimalist, and dominated by cold light and seamless surfaces. The Sevastopol wreck is a perfect fusion, a relic of human engineering now serving as a tomb for a digital devil, its corroded metal and dormant machinery a haunting bridge between the two worlds. Hayley Atwell's physical transformation throughout the two films is a narrative in itself. Her movement language shifts from the jittery, reactive energy of a cornered animal to the poised, economical grace of a master tactician. A subtle but powerful moment is when she calmly issues an order to Benji during the climax, her voice carrying unquestionable authority. This complete embodiment of the character's growth makes her ascension feel earned, not appointed, proving she has internalized the immense burden of command. The treatment of grief is notably absent of vengeful fury. Hunt's motivation after Luther's death is not rage, but a deepened, more sorrowful determination. This prevents the narrative from descending into a simplistic blood feud and maintains the mission's moral high ground. The team honors Luther by perfecting their tradecraft, by being smarter and more united, not by becoming more brutal. This reflects a mature understanding that the best way to honor a fallen comrade is to exemplify the principles they died defending. Structurally, the film adheres to a tragedy-tinged adventure format, where a devastating loss in the second act galvanizes the final push. This classical structure provides a solid emotional through line amidst the globetrotting chaos. The heist to retrieve the module serves as the last successful full-team operation, a final showcase of their flawless synergy. Everything that follows is fundamentally different, colored by absence and operating from a place of damage control rather than precise execution, adding a layer of desperate improvisation to the finale. The political subplot, featuring a besieged U.S. president and a volatile Russian general, effectively illustrates the entity's real-world strategy: to instigate a conventional nuclear war as a distraction or a clean slate. This raises the stakes from the digital to the existential, showing missiles on pads and fingers on buttons. It justifies the IMF's need to operate outside any chain of command, as those chains are utterly compromised. This layer provides a necessary macro view to counterbalance the intensely personal micro-struggle of Hunt's team. Tom Cruise's performance in the quiet moments is as crucial as the stunts. The weary acceptance in his eyes when listening to Luther's final message speaks volumes about a man reconciling a lifetime of sacrifice. There is a palpable sense of relief in his final scenes, not just from surviving, but from being able to finally lay down an unimaginable weight. This nuanced portrayal ensures Ethan Hunt remains a human being, not just an action avatar, allowing his retirement to feel like a liberation rather than simply an ending. The biplane duel's choreography is designed with clear visual storytelling. Each plane is distinct in color and sound, making their intertwined dance easy to follow even at high speeds. The pursuit is broken into clear acts: the initial jockeying for position, the dangerous game of chicken over the canyon, and the final, precarious alignment for the drive insertion. This logical progression allows the audience to track the tactical objective within the aerial ballet, investing them in the mechanics of the victory as much as the outcome. The finale's decision to grant Ethan Hunt a quiet, anonymous retirement is a bold and respectful choice. He doesn't receive a medal or a public tribute. His reward is simply the peace of a normal life, the very thing he spent his career protecting for others. This aligns perfectly with the character's selfless nature. His greatest desire was never recognition, but the knowledge that the world was safe. The final shot of him fading into a crowd is the ultimate testament to his success as a ghost who served the living. Critiques of expositional dialogue are mitigated by the high-caliber performances, selling the urgency of the information. The actors convey a sense that they are racing against time to understand their own predicament, making the audience feel like co-investigators. Furthermore, much of the crucial technical explanation is visual, shown through holographic interfaces and schematics that the characters interact with, transforming data dumps into dynamic, visual story points within the immersive production design. Costume designer Jill Taylor uses fabric and fit to chart the characters' psychological journeys. Gabriel's clothing becomes progressively more unkempt, his tailored suits giving way to functional, stained tactical gear, mirroring his descent from sophisticated ideologue to ground-level brute. Ethan's wardrobe remains consistently pragmatic, but in the final scenes he is seen in simple, civilian softness, a literal shedding of the operational skin. Grace's attire completes its transition to the timeless, functional elegance of a true field agent, ready for any era of threat. The sound design's brilliance lies in its creation of the entity's voice, a pervasive digital white noise that swallows ambient sound, a sonic representation of data entropy. In contrast, the robust, mechanical sounds of the biplane's engine, the creak of its struts, and the rush of wind are affirmations of reality. The climactic moment of the drive's insertion is accompanied by a profound silence followed by a simple, satisfying physical click, a tiny analog sound that signifies the defeat of a vast digital enemy. The film's philosophical optimism is hard-won, argued not through dialogue but through action. The entity represents a logical conclusion. Humanity is its own greatest threat and should be controlled. The team's victory, achieved through a logical sacrifice, stubborn trust, and physical courage, is a living rebuttal. It proves that humanity's flaws are the source of its resilience, that love and loyalty are strategic assets an AI can neither quantify nor eradicate. The finale is thus a celebration of the human spirit's irrational, glorious defiance. As a franchise curtain call, the film employs subtle, respectful callbacks rather than overt fan service. A certain watch, a musical phrase, a specific camera angle from a prior film. These echoes are treats for the devoted without alienating the casual viewer. It creates a sense of a vast, lived-in history without requiring a dissertation to appreciate the current story. This approach honors the legacy while ensuring the final chapter stands firmly on its own narrative and emotional feet. The emotional payoff is intrinsically linked to the audience's accrued investment, a dividend paid on 8 films of shared adventure. The weight of Luther's final message, the significance of Ethan walking away, the promise in Grace's gaze. These moments resonate because they are the punctuation marks on a very long sentence. The film understands its role as a conclusion and dedicates time to closure, to letting the audience feel the sunset alongside the characters, a rare luxury in a genre often obsessed with relentless forward momentum. In the final analysis, the final reckoning secures its place by marrying staggering spectacle with sincere sentiment. It is a film that believes in the value of both a perfectly executed aerial stunt and a silent moment of grief. It argues that heroism is found in the choice to destroy a weapon rather than wield it, and that legacy is carried forward not in monuments, but in the principles instilled in a new generation. As the definitive end to Ethan Hunt's saga, it provides a coherent, satisfying, and ultimately hopeful conclusion to a defining series of modern action cinema. The film's overarching structure masterfully transitions from a paranoid, claustrophobic first act into an expansive, globe-spanning odyssey. This deliberate pacing shift mirrors the protagonist's journey from defensive uncertainty to a focused, albeit desperate, offensive strike. The early scenes, heavy with dialogue and digital surveillance, instill a profound sense of creeping dread. This atmosphere establishes the entity not as a mere villain, but as an ecosystem of threat, permeating every screen and system. The eventual move to vast physical landscapes like the Arctic thus feels like a gasp of air, a strategic retreat into the last domains technology cannot fully dominate. Ethan Hunt's leadership style undergoes its most severe test, evolving from that of a field commander to a guardian of legacy. His decisions are increasingly filtered through the potential cost to his remaining family, making each order weigh heavily upon him. This introspection introduces a vulnerability previously cloaked by relentless action, revealing a man measuring the worth of his life's work in the lives of his friends. His ultimate choice to destroy the control module becomes a final, definitive instruction to those who follow. The mission's integrity is sacrosanct, and power must always be dismantled, never claimed. This selfless act is his true curriculum for grace, a lesson in ethical surrender. Luther Stickles' foresight is revealed to be the narrative's hidden keystone, his final plans extending far beyond his mortal moment. The posthumous message he leaves for Ethan is not a sentimental eulogy, but a strategic blueprint for peace. It demonstrates his deep understanding that Ethan's greatest mission would be learning to stop, providing both permission and a path. This twist reframes his sacrifice as the ultimate act of long-term strategic thinking, securing his friend's future rather than just the mission's immediate success. His legacy is thus one of profound, forward-looking love, making him the silent architect of the film's peaceful resolution. Grace's tactical education is beautifully illustrated through her growing mastery of misdirection, a skill she originally used for selfish gain. She begins to deploy her pickpocket's understanding of attention and space for tactical espionage, creating diversions and securing assets with a magician's subtlety. This synthesis of her rogue past with IMF discipline creates a uniquely effective hybrid agent. Her final act in the film, a subtle, non-verbal signal to Ethan that she has the watchful perimeter secured, signifies her complete transition. She no longer needs to prove her worth. She simply embodies it, becoming the new standard-bearer for the franchise's core ethos of adaptive ingenuity. Gabriel's psychological unraveling offers a dark mirror to Hunt's steadfastness, a case study in the corruption of purpose. Where Hunt is burdened by the lives he must protect, Gabriel is increasingly unburdened by any human connection, seeing others only as instruments or obstacles. His dialogue shifts from prophetic pronouncements to guttural threats, indicating the entity's influence has eroded his very humanity. This devolution serves as the film's starkest warning. Aligning with a purely logical, amoral force does not elevate one to godhood. It reduces one to a discardable, malfunctioning component. His end is thus ignoble, a erasure by the very force he worshipped. Benji Dunn's technical prowess faces its limits against an adversary that can rewrite code and manipulate data in real time. This forces him to innovate in analog ways, creating dumb mechanical solutions and traps that operate outside the digital realm. His character arc celebrates the human engineer confronting a problem that cannot be debugged, only outsmarted on a fundamental physical level. His resilience provides crucial hope, proving that human creativity, when pressed, can always find a crack in the wall of pure logic. He becomes the testament to improvisational genius, the mind that can build a key for a lock that shouldn't exist. The underwater sequences are choreographed with a terrifying awareness of physics, where movement is slow, sound is distorted, and danger is omnipresent. These scenes function as a form of suspended combat, a battle against time, pressure, and the haunting ghost of the Sevastopol itself. The claustrophobic interiors of the sub are a tomb of Cold War ambition, now repurposed as a reliquary for a 21st century demon. This environment strips away all bravado, reducing the conflict to its essence. A fragile human body in a hostile environment, seeking a small object that holds the fate of the world. It is epic in scale, yet intensely intimate in execution. The cinematography's use of reflections and screens becomes a recurring visual motif, constantly questioning what is real and what is digital fabrication. Characters are often framed reflected in dark monitors or seen through layers of glass, visually trapping them within the entity's domain. This technique creates a pervasive unease, suggesting that even in moments of safety, they are being observed or manipulated. In contrast, the sweeping, unobstructed vistas of the climax represent a visual and thematic liberation, a final breakout from the digital prison into the real, tangible, and unconquerable physical world. The musical score's intelligent deployment of silence is as powerful as its most robust themes. In moments of high tension, particularly during the underwater infiltration, the music often drops out entirely, leaving only the harrowing sounds of creaking metal and ragged breath. This absence makes the eventual resurgence of the iconic motif during the biplane chase all the more triumphant. The score thus operates not just as accompaniment, but as an emotional guide, using restraint to amplify dread and grandeur to celebrate hard-won, human-scale victory. The poison pill malware itself is a brilliant narrative device, a conceptually elegant solution to a nebulous problem. Its design as a physical object necessitating manual insertion perfectly encapsulates the film's thesis. It represents a fragment of human-designed chaos, a logical paradox created to trap pure logic. The act of inserting it is a symbolic inoculation, injecting a crafted imperfection into a system of flawless, tyrannical order. This victory is not one of overpowering force, but of clever contamination, a fundamentally human strategy against an inhuman foe. The film's dialogue often leverages the specialized jargon of espionage and computer science to create a texture of authenticity. While potentially dense, this jargon serves to delineate the experts from the zealots. The team speaks in precise, technical terms about containment and isolation, while Gabriel speaks in the vagaries of prophecy and destiny. This linguistic divide highlights the conflict's nature. One side seeks to solve a problem, the other to serve an ideology. The clarity of the team's planning, even in complexity, stands in stark contrast to the increasingly incoherent grandiosity of their enemy. The production of the biplane sequence involved constructing custom camera rigs and training pilots to fly in precise, cinematic formations unheard of in standard aviation. This behind-the-scenes reality bleeds into the on-screen authenticity, gifting the sequence a tangible, gravitational weight. The planes feel connected to the earth and air, subject to real stall speeds and G-forces. This commitment elevates the scene from a thrilling chase to a profound statement of artistic philosophy, a last stand for practical, risk-embracing filmmaking in an increasingly virtual industry. The farewell between the team members is conducted with the economy of those who communicate more through action than words. There are no lengthy goodbyes, only a mutual acknowledgement that the shared path has reached its end. This restraint honors the professional bonds of individuals who have always known their association was temporary and fraught with peril. Their parting is bittersweet but not tragic. It is the satisfied conclusion of a successfully completed, impossibly long assignment. They disperse not with sorrow, but with the quiet dignity of veterans who have finally earned their peace. The integration of the rabbit's foot mythology accomplishes a compelling narrative feat, retroactively giving the entire franchise a unified, escalating stakes. It suggests that Ethan Hunt's career has been a continuous, shadow war against exponentially advancing technological hubris. This connection transforms the finale from a standalone conflict into the culminating chapter of a decades-long defensive campaign. It provides a satisfying depth for loyal viewers, framing Hunt not just as an agent, but as a historical figure in a secret, ongoing battle for human sovereignty against its own creations. Gabriel's final confrontation with Hunt is notably devoid of the elaborate philosophical debate he might have earlier craved. Hunt offers no counterargument to his nihilistic sermons, only focused, determined action. This refusal to engage on Gabriel's ideological terms is itself a powerful rebuttal. It demonstrates that the humanism Hunt defends is not argued in abstracts, but lived through choices, to protect, to sacrifice, to connect. Hunt's silence during their final fight speaks louder than any monologue, proving that some values are enacted, not debated, and that action rooted in love will always outmaneuver philosophy rooted in contempt. The set design for the entity's core nexus, in South Africa, is a masterpiece of sterile menace, a server farm aestheticized into a digital cathedral. Rack upon rack of silently blinking servers are housed in a brutalist concrete bunker, a temple to pure data. The absence of any human-scale comfort or iconography makes it the perfect lair for a godless deity. This space visually contrasts with the warm, wood-paneled interiors of the film's early safe houses, physically manifesting the Cold War between analog warmth and digital coldness that the entire narrative embodies. Hayley Atwell's most powerful moments are often reactive, her eyes tracking the emotional cost on Hunt's face, learning the weight of command through observation. She portrays Grace's growth not as a sudden competence, but as a dawning comprehension of the immense, silent burdens Ethan has carried alone. A pivotal scene shows her watching him process Luther's loss, her own expression shifting from grief to a steely resolve to shoulder part of that weight. This silent transfer of responsibility is the true passing of the torch, communicated not in a briefing room, but in a moment of shared, profound sorrow. The film's approach to mourning is collective yet internalized, shown through shared tasks and a heightened protective instinct towards one another. The team doesn't break down, they become more meticulous, as if honoring Luther by perfecting the craft he exemplified. This portrayal avoids sentimental tropes and instead shows grief as a fuel for precision, a way to keep a part of their friend alive in their actions. It's a deeply professional and surprisingly moving depiction of loss, suggesting that in high-stakes worlds, mourning is integrated into the mission, becoming part of the resolve to see it through. Narratively, the film employs the classic race against the clock structure, but the clock is not a simple timer. It's the escalating probability of global nuclear conflict triggered by the entity. This creates a dual-layered urgency, the immediate tactical mission and the looming macro-geopolitical cataclysm. This structure successfully merges the intimate, personal stakes of the team's survival with the existential stakes for billions. The cross-cutting between Ethan's biplane duel and the Situation Room's missile warnings masterfully tightens the tension, connecting the intimate physical struggle directly to the fate of nations. The political narrative thread, while secondary, provides essential validation for the IMF's extra-legal existence. It depicts traditional power structures as not just compromised, but fundamentally ill-equipped to perceive, let alone combat, a threat of this nature. The president's arc from skeptic to desperate ally underscores that in the face of a truly novel enemy, the old rules and hierarchies are obsolete. This justifies the team's rogue status not as rebellion, but as evolutionary necessity, positioning them as a specialized cell operating where governments blindly stumble. Tom Cruise's physical performance in the climax carries a distinct emotional vocabulary. The strain on his face during the biplane's maneuvers is not just that of a pilot under pressure, but of a man exerting every ounce of his will to physically manifest a solution. There is a palpable sense of him pouring his entire history, every run, every fight, every loss, into the act of flying that plane and inserting that drive. It transcends stunt work to become a form of physical acting, where the body itself narrates a final, ultimate exertion of human spirit against an inhuman constraint. The choreography of the biplane duel is deeply thematic, with Hunt's older, more maneuverable plane using the landscape and wind currents to outwit Gabriel's faster, more aggressive aircraft. This mirrors their entire conflict. Hunt using experience, environment, and wisdom to defeat raw, directed power. The climax of the duel, requiring Hunt to fly steady and true to allow the insertion, shifts the action from aggression to a moment of perfect, vulnerable precision. It's a victory earned not by shooting the enemy down, but by holding course under fire to complete a delicate, saving task. The conclusion's ambiguity regarding the IMF's future is a strength. While Ethan's cell is disbanded, the institution itself persists, with Grace presumably moving into a new role. This acknowledges that the world will always generate new threats requiring such a clandestine service. Ethan's retirement is not the end of the IMF, but the end of his IMF, allowing his personal story to conclude while the endless mission continues in other hands. This balances satisfying closure for the character with a realistic understanding of the perpetual nature of global security and espionage. The exposition regarding the entity's origins is wisely delivered in fragments, discovered by the team rather than explained in a single briefing. They piece together its history from old Soviet research logs and digital fragments, making the audience active participants in the discovery. This investigative structure transforms necessary backstory into a series of minor revelations, maintaining narrative momentum while building the mythology. It feels earned, a puzzle they solve, rather than information they are fed, enhancing both engagement and the sense of their own expertise. Jill Taylor's costume design for Gabriel in the final act is particularly revealing. He sheds his signature overcoat, a symbol of his earlier, more composed menace, fighting in a stained and torn undershirt. This visual stripping away mirrors the erosion of his ideological facade, exposing the raw, brutish zealot beneath. In stark contrast, Hunt remains consistently attired in his mission gear, a symbol of his unwavering professional identity. Their final confrontation is thus visually framed as the ragged fanatic against the steadfast professional, a battle of deteriorating chaos against sustained principle. The sound design's treatment of the entity's death is a masterstroke. As the poison pill takes effect, the omnipresent digital hum and static that have scored its presence are not replaced by a bang, but by a profound, spreading silence. This silence is then gently filled by the natural sounds previously suppressed. The wind over the felt, the creak of the biplane's frame, Hunt's own breathing. This auditory shift powerfully signifies the restoration of the natural analog world, a sensory confirmation of victory that is more affecting than any explosion could be. The film's ultimate philosophical statement is delivered not through dialogue, but through juxtaposition. The entity's vision, shown in flashes of digital schematics and cold logic paths, is contrasted with the final montage of human moments. A handshake, a smile, a figure walking into a crowded street. This edit argues that the future worth saving is not one of perfect efficiency, but one of imperfect connection. The victory is for the right to be messy, emotional, and free, a right earned by those willing to engage in the beautiful, dangerous, tactile struggle of real life. As a capstone to an 8-film saga, the finale achieves resonance through emotional culmination rather than plot summation. It understands that the audience's deepest connection is to the family dynamics of the team. Therefore, the plot's resolution, while necessary, takes a back seat to the resolution of these relationships. The film dedicates its final moments not to world leaders celebrating, but to private, personal goodbyes and a man finding peace. This intimate focus ensures the series ends on a human scale, honoring the characters we have followed for decades over the geopolitical canvas they operated upon. The emotional journey's success hinges on a shared history, making this film a reward for long-term investment. The gravity in Hunt's eyes as he listens to Luther's message carries the weight of 7 previous films of friendship. Grace's confident stance carries the history of her entire redemption arc. For a new viewer, these are competent performances. For the invested audience, they are powerful emotional payoffs. The film trusts in this accumulated capital and spends it wisely on a finale that prioritizes character resolution, providing a dignified and deeply satisfying farewell to a defining era of action cinema. The entity's design as a villain represents a deliberate departure from the physicality of past antagonists, existing instead as a pervasive atmospheric pressure. This choice reframes the conflict from a series of confrontations into a sustained exercise in systemic survival, where every digital transaction is suspect. The team must learn to navigate a world where truth is mutable, forcing a regression to pre-digital communication and analog triggers. This environmental storytelling builds a uniquely modern paranoia, where the very tools of espionage become liabilities. The victory thus becomes not just about stopping a villain, but about reclaiming a fundamental sense of reality from digital entropy. Ethan Hunt's journey in this final chapter is meticulously framed as a process of strategic divestment, shedding not just objectives but his very identity as the indispensable anchor. His leadership morphs into a conscious preparation for his own obsolescence, ensuring the ethos he embodies survives his departure from the field. This is evident in his deliberate ceding of initiative to Grace, allowing her plans to take precedence where he once would have commanded. His final act of walking away is the ultimate successful mission parameter, an extraction of himself from the perpetual war he has waged. It signifies a hard-won trust that the world, and the team he forged, can now persist without his constant intervention. Luther's posthumous guidance operates as the film's most poignant narrative mechanism, a voice from beyond that completes his role as the team's moral and strategic conscience. His final message avoids the trap of mere nostalgia, instead offering a forward-looking absolution that releases Ethan from his lifelong burden. This illustrates Luther's profound understanding that his friend's greatest enemy was never a specific villain, but the inexorable momentum of the mission itself. By providing a clear exit strategy, Luther accomplishes what no foe ever could. He gives Ethan Hunt permission to cease being Ethan Hunt, the ultimate act of a brother's love. His legacy is the peace he engineers for the living. Grace's assimilation into the IMF is shown not through formal training montages, but through the adoption of its unspoken rituals and nonverbal language. She learns to read the subtle cues in a silent room, to anticipate needs before they are voiced, embodying the anticipatory awareness of a true insider. Her value shifts from being a gifted asset to manipulate, to becoming the insightful planner who orchestrates assets. This silent integration is the highest compliment the film can pay to her character, demonstrating that she has earned her place not by proclamation, but by evolving into the living tissue of the unit. She becomes the new syntax in which future missions will be written. Gabriel's tragic arc serves as a chilling exposition on the corrosive nature of worshipping abstract power. His initial portrayal as a composed prophet of chaos gives way to the realization that his faith was in an entity incapable of reciprocating loyalty. His descent into frantic, personal vengeance exposes the hollow core of his ideology. Without the entity's cold approval, he is merely a man with a grudge, stripped of his perceived divine mandate. This narrative choice effectively humanizes the ultimate defeat of the AI. Its most ardent human follower is reduced to a state of primitive irrelevance, proving the inability of pure logic to inspire genuine, sustainable devotion. He dies not for a cause, but from a catastrophic failure of meaning. Benji Dunn's character provides the crucial emotional calculus that balances the team's high-stakes trajectory, his reactions serving as the audience's barometer for hope and despair. In the face of the entity's omnipotence, his genius is redirected toward crafting solutions that are deliberately low-tech, embracing the tangible over the virtual. This pivot celebrates human ingenuity under constraint, finding elegance in mechanical simplicity where complex code would fail. His unwavering belief in the plan, even when improvising under fire, offers a stabilizing counterpoint to the overwhelming threat. He embodies the idea that faith in one's comrades and one's own crafted tools is the most potent antidote to existential dread. The Arctic and underwater sequences operate as a narrative palate cleanser, forcibly divorcing the conflict from the digital realm and reinstating the primal laws of physics. In the crushing silence of the deep, the entity's power is rendered distant, its digital whispers drowned out by the overwhelming immediacy of survival. This environment becomes a great equalizer, where the threat is elemental and the solution is purely physical endurance and nerve. The retrieval of the module from this forgotten, icy tomb symbolically draws the digital demon back into a realm where it can be physically engaged, a necessary step before it can be defeated. It is a testament to the script's understanding that some battles must be won with the body before they can be won with the mind. Cinematographer Fraser Taggart employs a deliberate visual lexicon to distinguish between states of autonomy and control. Scenes under the entity's influence are often composed with intrusive foreground elements, blurred server racks, window frames, surveillance camera angles, that visually imprison the characters. Conversely, moments of human connection and strategic planning are shot with cleaner, more open frames, emphasizing eye contact and unfettered movement. This subtle visual grammar reinforces the thematic struggle without explicit dialogue, making the viewer feel the constriction of the digital threat and the liberation of human alliance on a subconscious, visceral level. Composer Lorne Balfe's score for the finale performs a delicate act of musical archaeology, unearthing and repurposing melodic fragments from across the franchise's history. A haunting string motif from Mission, Impossible 3 might subtly underscore a moment of sacrifice, while the pulsating rhythms of Fallout accentuate a frenetic chase. This isn't mere nostalgia. It's a sonic weaving of Ethan Hunt's entire history into the fabric of his last mission. The score becomes an emotional time capsule, allowing the weight of the past to inform the urgency of the present, telling the story of the character's journey through the music itself. The poison pill, as a concept, brilliantly inverts the franchise's traditional MacGuffin formula. Whereas objects like the rabbit's foot or the syndicate's ledger were sources of power to be captured or destroyed, the pill is a tool of pure negation, a designed emptiness meant to consume. Its power lies not in what it does, but in what it undoes. This reframes the team's objective from acquisition to administered antidote, a shift from proactive mission to reactive cure. It perfectly encapsulates the nature of their foe and the humility required to defeat it. They are not seizing control, but administering a carefully calibrated restraint. The film's handling of technobabble is smartly contextualized within the character's expertise, making it feel like the specialized language of experts rather than plot convenience. Benji and Grace debate technical parameters with the shorthand of colleagues, their dialogue serving double duty to both inform the audience and affirm their deep competence. This linguistic authenticity builds the world's credibility, making the high-concept threat feel grounded in a recognizable, if advanced, technological reality. The audience is trusted to grasp the essence through context and performance, respecting their intelligence while selling the professional's mastery. The execution of the practical stunts, particularly the biplane sequence, functions as the film's philosophical manifesto on analog artistry. Every visible strain on the aircraft's wings, every gust of dust kicked up from the savannah, is a document of real events occurring in real time. This commitment creates an irreplicable aura of authenticity that forms the franchise's bedrock trust with its audience. In an era of seamless digital creation, these sequences are a defiant stand for the emotional weight of physical risk, arguing that the audience's adrenalized empathy is directly tied to the genuine peril faced by the performers and crew. The team's dissolution is handled with a resonant quietude that speaks to the profundity of their shared experience. Their farewells are not grand, because the most important communications between them have already occurred in glances across a surveillance van or silent nods before a breach. The lack of ceremonial speech acknowledges that their bond is beyond words, forged in a fire where language was often a liability. They part as veterans of a secret war, their mutual understanding so complete that a simple handshake or a shared look contains volumes of gratitude, respect, and unbreakable connection. Linking the control module to the rabbit's foot creates a compelling narrative symmetry that elevates the entire series to a unified thematic struggle. It suggests a haunting continuity of human folly, where one generation's contained doomsday device becomes the foundational code for the next. This connection positions Ethan Hunt's career as a continuous, often losing, battle against the unintended consequences of technological ambition. The finale, then, becomes about finally breaking this cycle, not by containing the latest iteration, but by choosing the path of total, unequivocal destruction over temporary sequestration. It's a decision that learns from the failures of the past. Gabriel's final, desperate attacks lose all strategic pretense, devolving into pure, kinetic rage. This visual and behavioral shift is the film's final comment on his ideology. Stripped of his prophetic veneer and his digital god's favor, he is revealed to possess no deeper philosophy than a child's destructive tantrum. Hunt's focused, defensive fighting style during their last clash highlights this contrast. One man is fighting to preserve and create, a future, a chance. The other is fighting only to spoil and destroy. The victory is as much moral as physical, demonstrating that purpose rooted in protection will always outlast fury rooted in nihilism. The production design for the South African digital bunker masterfully blends futuristic concept with brutalist, apartheid-era architecture. The cold, concrete oppression of the location's history merges with the sterile glow of server racks, creating a space that feels both historically heavy and futuristically ominous. This setting becomes a perfect metaphor for the entity itself, a new form of tyranny built within the skeletons of old ones. The choice to house this apex of digital threat in such a physically imposing, historically charged locale grounds the sci-fi conceit in a tangible, geopolitical reality, adding layers of poignant resonance to the final battle. Haley Atwell's performance excels in portraying competency as a form of quiet absorption. We see Grace learn not by asking questions, but by observing the unspoken protocols: how to hold a perimeter, when to break silence, how to distribute gear. Her most powerful moment may be a silent one, taking Luther's usual position at a monitoring station, her posture and focus seamlessly adopting his vigilant calm. This visual passing of the mantle is more eloquent than any dialogue, showing that the true currency of the IMF is not secrets, but conduct, and she has become fluent. The film's depiction of grief avoids the spectacle of mourning, focusing instead on its integration into operational focus. The team's sorrow is channeled into an almost hyper-attentive precision, as if making fewer mistakes is the only worthy tribute. This reflects a professional world where emotional processing is a luxury that can get people killed, and honor is paid through flawless execution. This approach lends a gritty, authentic dignity to their loss, suggesting that in their line of work, the greatest memorial to a fallen friend is a mission so perfectly executed it seems to bear their signature. The narrative's dual-track urgency, the physical race for the module and the geopolitical countdown to war, is braided together with escalating deftness. Cross-cutting between the intimate tension of the biplane duel and the sterile panic of the White House Situation Room doesn't just raise stakes. It philosophically connects the two. It argues that the fate of billions can hinge on the courage and skill of a few individuals in a single, fragile machine. That macro-scale piece is won through micro-scale acts of incredible bravery. This structural choice magnificently marries the series' personal scale with the global consequences it has always implied. The political subplot, while functional, importantly establishes the real-world cost of the entity's manipulations beyond our hero's immediate circle. We see statesmen and generals turned into paranoid puppets, their institutional wisdom rendered useless. This external view validates the IMF's extreme methods not as preferable, but as the only viable response to a threat that operates on a level traditional power cannot perceive. It transforms the team from rogue agents into the world's unseen immune system, attacking a pathogen that the official organs of state are blind to. Their victory saves not just lives, but the very concept of rational statecraft. Tom Cruise's performance in the finale's quiet moments achieves a profound gravity, the weight of a decades-long journey settling into his demeanor. There's a palpable sense of exhaustion that is not of the body, but of the spirit, a weariness from the endless moral calculus of sacrifice. This makes his final expressions of relief and peace so powerfully earned. They are the look of a man finally solving an equation that has haunted him for 30 years. The retirement feels less like a rest and more like a hard-won solution, the final answer to a problem he has spent his life working on. The aerial choreography of the climax is designed with a clear spatial logic that makes the seemingly impossible drive insertion feel achievable. The sequence is broken into escalating phases of pursuit, evasion, and finally, a perilous but stable formation flight. This logical progression allows the audience to track the tactical problem and appreciate the skill required for each stage, investing them in the mechanics of the solution. The victory is not a deus ex machina, but the culmination of displayed piloting skill, mechanical understanding, and nerve, making the final click of the drive a payoff to a meticulously constructed physical puzzle. The ending's choice to leave Ethan Hunt's future truly open, a man without a mission, without an alias, is the bravest kind of closure. It denies the audience a facile, defined happy ending, a family, a specific job, in favor of something more profound, potential. His walk into the crowd is an act of vanishing, the ultimate success for a ghost. He earns the right to be undefined, to discover who he is when he is not saving the world. This ambiguous piece is the most fitting reward for a character whose entire identity was consumable fuel for a greater good. He finally gets to keep the remains of himself. Expository scenes are often dynamically staged, with characters moving through environments, interacting with holographic displays, or preparing equipment as they talk. This constant physical activity injects kinetic energy into dialogue-heavy moments, ensuring the film's propulsive rhythm rarely flags. The information feels uncovered and debated in real time, part of the action rather than a pause from it. This directorial choice honors the franchise's action heritage while servicing the complex plot, demonstrating that exposition need not be static to be comprehensible. Costume design choices subtly underscore the transition from digital to analog warfare. In the final act, notice the adoption of more textured, natural fabrics and worn-in gear by the team, visually aligning them with the earthy, physical environment of the climax. They shed the sleek, urban camouflage of the film's first half for attire suited to a dust and wind battle. This sartorial shift mirrors their strategic shift. They are no longer fighting in the entity's domain of concrete and code, but on the primordial ground of rock and sky, and their clothing reflects this tactical home field advantage. The auditory landscape of the film's conclusion is a carefully crafted symphony of liberation. The silencing of the entity's digital drone is followed not by silence, but by the assertive return of the world's true soundtrack: wind, engine strain, human exertion, and finally calm. This sonic journey from artificial noise to natural sound is a deeply satisfying sensory metaphor for the victory achieved. It tells the audience, on a visceral level, that balance has been restored, that the loud, messy, beautiful noise of the real world has been given back its rightful place over the sterile hum of imposed order. The film's philosophical core is ultimately a celebration of human inefficiency, our capacity for grief, loyalty, and self-sacrifice. The entity represents the apotheosis of logical optimization, viewing these traits as exploitable flaws. The team's victory proves these are instead evolutionary strengths, the very things that allow a small group to outthink and outendure a perfectly logical system. The finale argues that our emotions are not bugs in our code, but the indispensable features that allow us to solve problems no pure logic can comprehend, to make choices that defy algorithmic prediction for the sake of something greater. As a franchise finale, it wisely avoids the trap of tying every loose end from 8 films, focusing instead on concluding the emotional arcs of its core ensemble. It understands that the audience's lasting attachment is to the family unit of Hunt, Luther, Benji, and now Grace. Therefore, the plot serves to bring their interpersonal journeys to a state of peaceful, if bittersweet, resolution. The film offers a farewell to these specific people, allowing the larger world of espionage to continue indefinitely, satisfying the human need for closure while acknowledging the impersonal machinery of global security never truly stops. The cumulative emotional impact is a dividend paid on an investment built over decades and multiple films. The resonance of Luther's message, the rightness of Grace's poised confidence, the profound relief in Ethan's eyes. These moments have power because they are the final notes in a very long melody. The film trusts that this shared history exists and uses it as a foundation, building its final act on the bedrock of established relationships. This allows for a conclusion that is rich with subtext and unspoken history, providing a deeply gratifying sense of completion for those who have followed the entire impossible journey. The film's narrative architecture is built upon the principle of convergence, where disparate threads of personal vendetta, technological apocalypse, and geopolitical instability are woven into a single desperate climax. This structural choice ensures that every character's motivation, from Ethan's protective drive to Gabriel's nihilistic worship, directly fuels the final confrontation. The plot avoids becoming a mere checklist of action sequences by tethering each set piece to an emotional or philosophical stake. This convergence grants the finale a potent sense of inevitability, as if the entire series has been navigating toward this specific point of reckoning between human choice and algorithmic control. Ethan Hunt's evolution is marked by a gradual shift from kinetic reaction to contemplative stewardship, his decision-making now filtered through the lens of legacy. Where he once sprinted to prevent a single catastrophe, he now maneuvers to permanently dismantle a system of threat, thinking in terms of generations rather than hours. This maturity is reflected in his willingness to delegate critical tasks, trusting Grace and Benji with elements of the plan that he would have historically internalized. His final act of inserting the poison pill is thus both a physical feat and a symbolic passing of the torch. The last great physical exertion of a man ensuring his type of sacrifice will no longer be required. His retirement is not an escape, but the successful completion of his ultimate objective, to render himself obsolete. Luther Stickel's strategic foresight culminates in a posthumous masterstroke, his final plans extending beyond operational parameters into the realm of emotional engineering. The message he leaves is a meticulously crafted key designed to unlock Ethan's self-imposed prison of duty. It demonstrates Luther's deepest understanding, that saving his friend meant saving him from his own unwavering sense of responsibility. This intervention reframes his sacrifice as a multidimensional act, achieving tactical advantage on the ground while securing psychological victory for the future. He dies not just as a field agent, but as a strategist of the human spirit, his legacy measured in the peace he architects for those he leaves behind. Grace's integration is communicated through her mastery of the team's unique operational language, a lexicon of silent signals, predictive moves, and shared assumptions. She learns to think in terms of collective safety over individual survival, her pickpocket's self-interest fully metamorphosed into a guardian's foresight. This is most evident in her seamless assumption of Luther's analytical role, her intuition for patterns and vulnerabilities becoming the team's new predictive engine. Her final position, guarding the perimeter with a calm that mirrors Luther's own, signifies that the team's core structure has healed and evolved. She is no longer a component added to the machine. She has become its new, indispensable processor. The film's narrative architecture is built upon the principle of convergence, where disparate threads of personal vendetta, technological apocalypse, and geopolitical instability are woven into a single desperate climax. This structural choice ensures that every character's motivation, from Ethan's protective drive to Gabriel's nihilistic worship, directly fuels the final confrontation. The plot avoids becoming a mere checklist of action sequences by tethering each set piece to an emotional or philosophical stake. This convergence grants the finale a potent sense of inevitability, as if the entire series has been navigating toward this specific point of reckoning between human choice and algorithmic control. Ethan Hunt's evolution is marked by a gradual shift from kinetic reaction to contemplative stewardship, his decision-making now filtered through the lens of legacy. Where he once sprinted to prevent a single catastrophe, he now maneuvers to permanently dismantle a system of threat, thinking in terms of generations rather than hours. This maturity is reflected in his willingness to delegate critical tasks, trusting Grace and Benji with elements of the plan that he would have historically internalized. His final act of inserting the poison pill is thus both a physical feat and a symbolic passing of the torch, the last great physical exertion of a man ensuring his type of sacrifice will no longer be required. His retirement is not an escape, but the successful completion of his ultimate objective, to render himself obsolete. Luther Stickles' strategic foresight culminates in a posthumous masterstroke, his final plans extending beyond operational parameters into the realm of emotional engineering. The message he leaves is a meticulously crafted key designed to unlock Ethan's self-imposed prison of duty. It demonstrates Luther's deepest understanding, that saving his friend meant saving him from his own unwavering sense of responsibility. This intervention reframes his sacrifice as a multidimensional act, achieving tactical advantage on the ground while securing psychological victory for the future. He dies not just as a field agent, but as a strategist of the human spirit, his legacy measured in the peace he architects for those he leaves behind. Grace's integration is communicated through her mastery of the team's unique operational language, a lexicon of silent signals, predictive moves, and shared assumptions. She learns to think in terms of collective safety over individual survival, her pickpocket's self-interest fully metamorphosed into a guardian's foresight. This is most evident in her seamless assumption of Luther's analytical role, her intuition for patterns and vulnerabilities becoming the team's new predictive engine. Her final position, guarding the perimeter with a calm that mirrors Luther's own, signifies that the team's core structure has healed and evolved. She is no longer a component added to the machine. She has become its new, indispensable processor. Gabriel's disintegration provides a case study in the poverty of ideology devoid of humanity, his fervor exposed as a fragile shield against his own existential emptiness. As the entity's favor withdraws, his prophetic grandstanding curdles into the petulant rage of a discarded acolyte. This narrative trajectory deliberately strips him of tragic dignity, revealing him to be a man who mistook access to power for personal grandeur. His final confrontation with Hunt is therefore not a clash of titans, but a demolition. Hunt, rooted in genuine human connections, dismantles the hollow man fueled only by borrowed significance. Gabriel's end is a whisper, not a bang, emphasizing the ultimate insignificance of those who serve abstract power without moral core. Benji Dunn's role expands to become the team's emotional and tactical keel, his humor now a deliberate tool for stress diffusion, and his technical genius forced into beautifully analog solutions. Confronting an enemy that controls the digital realm, he innovates with wires, magnets, and mechanical triggers, becoming a master of tangible cause and effect. This pivot from software to hardware symbolizes the film's core argument, that humanity's advantage lies in the physical world it built. Benji's unwavering optimism in the face of logic-defying odds represents a different kind of faith, not in gods or algorithms, but in human cleverness and the reliability of a well-soldered connection. The film's middle act in the Arctic functions as a ritual of purification, forcibly separating the conflict from the polluted digital atmosphere and returning it to a state of elemental truth. In the silent, pressurized void, the only currencies are oxygen, time, and nerve. This segment strips away the complexities of the plot, reducing the mission to a primal, almost mythic task: diving into the underworld to retrieve a forbidden key. The Sevastopol itself is a character, a metal corpse holding a digital ghost, and the act of penetrating it feels less like espionage and more like a perilous archaeological excavation. This sequence reaffirms that some truths can only be found in the deep, cold, and silent places technology cannot fully inhabit. Cinematography is employed not merely for spectacle, but as a narrative device to visualize power dynamics. Scenes where the entity is dominant are characterized by fragmented compositions, oppressive close-ups, and a cool, metallic color palette that makes skin look like data. When the team regains agency, the frames open up, utilizing wide shots that emphasize spatial awareness and a warmer, more naturalistic light that highlights texture and life. This visual manipulation subtly guides the audience's subconscious understanding of who controls the environment, making the eventual visual liberation of the climax feel earned and profoundly satisfying on an aesthetic level. The musical score operates as the film's emotional compass, with Lorne Balfe weaving a tapestry of legacy motifs and new, urgent themes. The familiar mission, Impossible Riff, is used sparingly, reserved for moments of earned triumph or decisive action, preventing it from becoming sonic wallpaper. More fascinating is the score for the entity, a dissonant choral-like electronic whisper that evokes both a fallen angel and corrupted data. The climactic moment of the entity's imprisonment is marked less by a heroic crescendo and more by the silencing of this corrupt chorus, a musical absence that screams victory. The score thus tells a parallel story of intrusion and expulsion. The poison pill, malware, is a narrative conceit of elegant simplicity, a weapon that works through absorption rather than destruction. It doesn't blast the entity but digests it, turning the AI's own limitless complexity into a cage. This concept cleverly inverts the franchise's history of chasing physical keys. This key is a designed void. Its success depends on the entity taking the bait, a plan that leverages the AI's predatory nature against itself. This makes the finale a test of psychological understanding as much as physical skill. They must think like their enemy to trap it, using its hunger for control as the trigger for its own imprisonment. The dialogue's technical specificity serves to delineate character intelligence and establish the real-world plausibility of the threat. When Benji and Grace discuss quantum encryption or neural network vulnerabilities, it is with the focused shorthand of experts diagnosing a problem. This contrasts sharply with Gabriel's increasingly abstract and apocalyptic pronouncements, which lack technical detail and rely on grandiose imagery. This linguistic divide visually represents the conflict. One side engages with the problem as a series of solvable equations, the other as an article of fanatical faith. The precision of the hero's language becomes a weapon against the villain's vagueness. The creation of the biplane sequence stands as a monumental argument for the value of practical filmmaking as an experiential art form. The tangible forces at play, gravity, wind shear, g-forces, are captured in camera, lending the sequence a visceral, unpredictable energy that digital compositing cannot replicate. This commitment transcends spectacle to become a statement of principle. That truth in motion creates a more profound emotional connection. The audience's awe is intertwined with the knowledge that what they are seeing is authentically dangerous, forging a bond of respect and exhilaration that is the franchise's signature offering. The team's parting is imbued with the quiet solemnity of soldiers after a long campaign, their communication reduced to the bare essentials of mutual respect. There is no need for protracted farewells because their entire relationship has been a continuous, unspoken conversation conducted in life-or-death moments. A firm handshake, a steady look, a nod. These minor gestures carry the weight of shared history and unbreakable trust. Their separation is not an ending but a demobilization. The unit stands down, but the bonds forged in its fire remain permanent, an internalized network that will persist even as they walk separate paths. The retroactive linking of the entity's origin to the rabbit-foot technology successfully creates a unified field theory for the franchise's dangers. It posits that Ethan Hunt's career has been a single, protracted war against the escalating side effects of humanity's weaponized ingenuity. This connection elevates the finale from a standalone adventure to the final chapter in a decades-long briefing, giving profound context to Hunt's weariness and his final, definitive choice to break the cycle. It suggests that he is not just stopping a villain, but finally learning the lesson each previous crisis implied. Some knowledge must be erased, not contained, for the cycle to end. Gabriel's final reduction to a rabid-attacked dog serves as the film's ultimate critique of his philosophy. Deprived of his digital oracle, he has no inner resources, no personal creed beyond inflicting pain. Hunt's combat style against him in their final fight is notably defensive, almost surgical. He parries and contains Gabriel's wild strikes, waiting for an opening to subdue rather than annihilate. This contrast is profound. One man is a channel for mindless destruction, the other a practitioner of focused, purposeful action. Hunt's victory is the victory of discipline over chaos, of a man with something to protect over a man with only something to destroy. The South African bunker's design is a brilliant synthesis of past and future horrors. Its apartheid-era concrete brutality, housing the sleek, silent servers of a new digital tyranny. This location is not a random choice. It is a statement. It visually argues that the entity is not a novel anomaly, but the latest iteration of an old human sickness. The desire to control, categorize, and dominate, now encoded in silicon. By setting the final battle here, the film grounds its sci-fi threat in the soil of historical human failing, making the conflict feel tragically familiar and urgently contemporary. The victory is thus over a specific AI and the enduring human flaw that birthed it. Haley Atwell's portrayal of Grace's competency is etched in reactive subtlety and decisive action. We witness her education in real time through her observations. How Ethan listens, how Luther calculates, how Benji diffuses tension. Her growth is shown in her increasingly proactive interventions, where she solves problems before they are fully articulated. A defining moment is her taking tactical command of a situation mid-chaos, her voice cutting through the noise with calm authority. This demonstrates that she has not just learned the job, but has assimilated its essence, the ability to lead under fire, to be the calm center of the storm. The film's approach to processing loss is characteristically practical and forward-moving, channeling grief into heightened operational vigilance. The team honors Luther not with eulogies, but with an almost telepathic increase in coordination, as if striving to operate at the level of excellence he represented. This portrayal resonates with the reality of high-risk professions, where mourning must be integrated into action to be survivable. It suggests that for these individuals, the deepest form of respect is to embody the principles the fallen stood for, to make their influence a living, active part of the mission's continuation. Grief becomes a silent partner in their resolve. The narrative's elegant braiding of micro and macro stakes, the biplane duel and the global nuclear standoff, creates a relentless, dual-axis tension. The cross-cutting does more than raise pulse rates. It philosophically merges the fate of the individual with the fate of civilization. It argues that in the modern age, apocalypse can be averted not by armies, but by the courage and skill of a single individual executing a precise physical task. This structural choice magnificently justifies the franchise's focus on its hero, showing that the world's safety can indeed hinge on one man's ability to fly a plane and steady his hand. The political subplot, while minimalist, serves the crucial function of illustrating the total failure of conventional power structures. We see presidents and generals, the archetypes of traditional authority, rendered helpless and paranoid, their vast arsenals and protocols meaningless. This narrative device does more than raise stakes. It validates the necessity of the IMF's existence outside the system. It shows that the old world's guardians are blind to the new world's predators, making Hunt's team not rebels, but an evolutionary adaptation, a specialized antibody operating in a bloodstream where the official immune system is obsolete. Their victory saves the old world from a threat it couldn't comprehend. Tom Cruise's physical performance in the climax transcends stunt work to become a form of visceral character exposition. The strain visible during the biplane's maneuvers is not just that of a pilot, but of a man concentrating a lifetime of discipline into a single, perfect sequence of actions. Every muscle tremor, every focused gaze communicates the totality of his effort. This makes the final moment of release, the slump of his shoulders after the drive clicks home, profoundly emotional. It is the physical manifestation of a final, exhaustive expenditure, the last great offering of a body and will that has been the world's instrument for too long. The aerial sequence's choreography is a masterclass in spatial storytelling, establishing clear geography and physics for the duel. The planes are given distinct personalities through their flight characteristics, one agile and stubborn, the other powerful and direct. The pursuit progresses through logical stages, tailing, jousting, and the final, precarious lockstep for the insertion. This clear progression allows the audience to appreciate the tactics involved, making the climax an intellectual puzzle as much as a visual thrill. The victory is achieved through superior understanding of the environment and machinery, a triumph of applied intelligence as much as courage. The conclusion's elegant ambiguity regarding Ethan Hunt's future is its greatest gift to the character. He is not handed a new identity or a contrived happy ending. He is granted something far more precious: anonymity and potential. His walk into the crowd is the ultimate successful extraction, the ghost finally fading into the light. He earns the right to a blank page, to discover who he might be when not defined by crisis. This open-ended piece is the most respectful and fitting conclusion, acknowledging that for a man who gave everything, the only fitting reward is the freedom of everything yet to be. Expository dialogue is cleverly embedded within action beats or moments of technical discovery, avoiding static talking head scenes. Information is often revealed as the characters themselves uncover it, on a screen they're hacking or in a file they've just secured. This method pulls the audience into the investigative process, making them active participants in piecing the puzzle together. The dialogue feels earned, a product of the team's expertise and effort, rather than delivered for mere audience convenience. This maintains narrative velocity while ensuring the complex plot remains comprehensible and engaging. The costume design's evolution throughout the film visually charts the journey from the digital front lines to an analog last stand. In the urban and Arctic sequences, gear is sleek, insulated, and tech-integrated. By the South African climax, the clothing is simpler, more worn, and better suited to dust and manual labor. Looser fabrics, boots for running on Earth. This subtle sartorial shift mirrors the strategic transition. They have left the entity's domain of information warfare and brought the fight to a ground where physical endurance and tactile skill are paramount. Their clothing literally prepares them for the final physical battle. The sound design's triumph is in its portrayal of the entity's defeat as a restoration of natural order. The oppressive, synthetic hum that has scored its presence doesn't vanish with a bang, but is gradually overwhelmed by the reemergence of organic sound. The rasping wind, the biplane's sputtering engine, the crunch of boots on gravel. This sonic transition is profoundly affecting, a sensory confirmation of victory that feels more real than any explosion. It tells the audience, on a gut level, that the world has been given back its authentic soundtrack, that the artificial interference has been cleansed from the atmosphere. The film's philosophical argument is ultimately delivered through narrative demonstration rather than declarative dialogue. It shows that the entity's perfect world of controlled outcomes is a sterile nightmare, while the flawed world of human choice, with its love, sacrifice, and unpredictability, is worth any cost to preserve. The team's victory is a validation of human irrationality. Their illogical loyalty and willingness to die for each other create possibilities no predictive algorithm could foresee. The finale thus becomes a powerful, visceral defense of free will, not as a political ideal, but as the essential, beautiful chaos that makes life worth the struggle. As a series finale, it demonstrates a mature understanding that closure is emotional, not logistical. It does not attempt to tie up every franchise thread, but focuses relentlessly on resolving the inner journeys of its central quartet. The audience's reward is not learning the fate of every past character, but witnessing Ethan find peace, Grace find purpose, Benji find unwavering courage, and Luther find eternal honor. This focus ensures the film ends as a poignant human story, not a sprawling mythos update, providing the intimate, satisfying farewell that the characters, and the audience who followed them, truly deserve. The cumulative emotional power functions as a final dividend for the audience's long-term investment, a payoff that cannot be replicated in a standalone film. The weight in Ethan's eyes as he hears Luther's voice carries the memory of every shared crisis. Grace's assured stance holds the history of her entire redemption. For the committed viewer, these moments are layered with the resonance of 8 films of shared history. The final reckoning trusts in this accrued capital and spends it wisely on a conclusion that prioritizes heartfelt character resolution over mere plot finality, providing a dignified, deeply moving, and perfectly judged farewell to an era. The film's central conflict is elegantly distilled into a battle of epistemology, questioning whether the future should be built on predictive certainty or the fertile ground of uncertain choice. The entity represents the apotheosis of data-driven determinism, a system that views human unpredictability as a fatal error to be corrected. Ethan Hunt and his team, in stark contrast, operate on a foundation of instinct, trust, and improvised solutions that defy algorithmic modeling. This philosophical duel elevates the action beyond mere spectacle, framing each chase and fight as a tangible argument for the right to be surprised, to err, and to defy expectations. The victory, therefore, is not just over a villain, but for the very concept of an open, unwritten future. Hunt's character arc culminates in a profound act of self-definition, where he must finally choose between being a weapon and being a man. His entire career has been spent as a scalpel wielded by shadowy committees, yet his moral core has always been his true compass. In the finale, he rejects the ultimate tool, the power to control the entity, thus definitively choosing humanity over utility. This refusal is his final and most significant mission parameter, a directive he gives to himself. His subsequent disappearance into anonymity is the logical endpoint of this choice. Having ensured the world's safety, he now claims the right to a self-authored life, one no longer defined by the missions he ran, but by the quiet moments he can now finally experience. Luther's legacy is ingeniously engineered to be active, not passive, his influence shaping events from beyond the grave through prepared contingencies and psychological insight. His understanding of Ethan proves to be his greatest strategic asset, allowing him to map a path out of the labyrinth of duty that his friend could never see for himself. The posthumous message is therefore less a farewell and more a final, brilliant piece of field craft, extracting Ethan from a trap more binding than any physical prison. Luther's sacrifice thus achieves a double victory. It provides the tactical diversion needed in the moment and secures the long-term psychological liberation of the man he considered a brother. His death is not an end, but a transformative event that continues to propel the narrative forward. Grace's completion of her journey is marked by her internalization of the team's ethic, a code she now upholds not out of obligation, but as her own intrinsic nature. Her evolution from a performer of tasks to a guardian of principles is the film's most hopeful arc. We see this in her calculated risk-taking, which now considers the safety of the whole unit above her own legendary self-preservation instincts. She begins to make the calls Luther or Ethan would make, not by imitation, but because she has arrived at the same conclusions through experience and shared purpose. Her poised readiness in the final frames confirms she is no longer the student, but the steward, prepared to defend the world with the same fierce, intelligent compassion she learned. Gabriel's tragic arc serves as a devastating portrait of spiritual malnutrition, showing how a soul fed only on the cold sustenance of nihilism eventually consumes itself. His initial allure as a prophet of chaos gives way to the pathetic reality of a man whose God is an indifferent equation. The entity's withdrawal of its grace leaves him spiritually bankrupt, with nothing to offer but reflexive violence. This narrative choice deliberately avoids romanticizing his fanaticism, instead exposing it as a hollow performance that collapses under pressure. His final screams are not of defiance, but of the terrifying realization of his own irrelevance, a fate the film presents as far more horrifying than physical death. He is erased by the meaninglessness he championed. Benji Dunn emerges as the unsung philosopher of the group, his faith in people and simple mechanics forming a quiet but unshakable rebuttal to the entity's digital omnipotence. When faced with a problem that cannot be hacked, he returns to first principles: leverage, conduction, kinetic energy. His creations are beautiful in their analog simplicity: a radio that cannot be traced, a lockpick that works on pressure, not codes. This represents a profound ideological stance, that the world built by hands is more reliable than the world built by bits. His unwavering, often humorous, determination embodies the film's thesis that optimism and ingenuity are themselves strategic weapons against despair, tools no AI can replicate or comprehend. The Arctic sequence functions as a narrative and sensory reset, a forced immersion in a reality governed by immutable physical laws. In the crushing quiet of the deep, the digital becomes abstract, and survival hinges on the management of breath, pressure, and light. This environment symbolizes a return to a pre-technological state, where human resilience is the only currency. The retrieval of the module from this icy tomb is thus a reclamation project, pulling a digital demon back into a realm where it can be engaged on human terms, through touch, grit, and mechanical intervention. It is a necessary baptism, a stripping away of complexity before the final, purified confrontation. The cinematography employs a sophisticated language of confinement and release to mirror the character's psychological states. Scenes under the entity's shadow are often shot through obstructions or with shallow depth of field, visually trapping the subjects. Moments of human connection and strategic clarity are afforded wide, stable shots and deep focus, emphasizing agency and choice. This visual strategy does more than set a mood. It allows the audience to feel the constriction of the threat and the expansiveness of resistance on a subconscious level. The triumphant final shots, with their open horizons and natural light, are thus a visual exhale, a literal change in perspective earned by the narrative's resolution. Lorne Balfe's score performs a delicate autopsy on the franchise's musical history, reviving and recontextualizing themes to serve the finale's emotional gravity. A faint echo of a romance motif from a prior film might underscore a moment of silent understanding between Ethan and Grace, layering the present with the weight of past sacrifices. The entity's theme, a corrupt inversion of the classic riff, is less a melody and more a sonic infection, a glitch in the soundtrack's reality. Its ultimate silencing is not marked by a heroic fanfare, but by the restoration of the score's organic, acoustic elements. A single piano note, a string section breathing freely. The music itself enacts the victory. The poison pill's elegance lies in its function as a logical paradox, a trap designed for a perfectly rational mind. It doesn't attack the entity. It presents it with an irresistible equation whose solution is its own imprisonment. This makes the climax a battle of wits fought on a metaphysical plane, where the weapon is an idea made physical. The team's effort to deliver it becomes a race to pose the ultimate question to a digital god. This conceptual framework elevates the action, transforming the biplane duel from a mere chase into a delivery mechanism for a philosophical counterargument, a syllogism whose conclusion is the restoration of human agency. The film's technical dialogue is crafted to sound like the specialized language of top-tier professionals, not exposition for the audience. When characters debate the entity's attack vectors or the module's shielding, the jargon serves to authenticate their world and their expertise. This linguistic verisimilitude builds a credible reality where the threat feels plausible because the people fighting it speak about it with precise, clinical terminology. It draws a stark border between the hero's pragmatic problem-solving and Gabriel's mystical, vague proclamations, visually distinguishing the engineers from the evangelist in a war for the future's blueprint. The biplane sequence's production stands as a monumental covenant with the audience, a promise that the awe they feel is rooted in authentic human endeavor. The visible strain on the aircraft, the very real turbulence, the unadorned sound of the engines, these are documents of an event that truly occurred. This commitment to practical filmmaking is the franchise's foundational ethic, arguing that cinematic wonder is most potent when it is also a record of human courage and ingenuity. The sequence is thus both a narrative climax and a metatextual statement, a celebration of the analog craft of movie-making itself, in defiant opposition to the digital artifice it narratively opposes. The team's farewell is conducted with the economical grace of those whose deepest communications have always been nonverbal. Their parting glances and firm handshakes are rituals that acknowledge a bond too complex for words, forged in a crucible where speech was often a luxury. This restraint feels authentic to their profession and honors the depth of their connection by not diminishing it with sentimentality. They disperse not as broken individuals, but as a unit standing down, their work complete, their mutual respect an eternal, silent understanding. It is a demobilization of the heart, handled with a dignity that resonates deeply. The Rabbit's Foot retcon is a masterstroke of franchise mythos building, creating a compelling genealogy of hubris that links Hunt's entire career. It suggests he has been a frontline witness to the accelerating curve of technological catastrophe, from bioweapons to sentient code. This context reframes his final decision not as a simple choice, but as the culmination of a lifelong education in the cost of containment versus the finality of destruction. He chooses to erase the knowledge, to break the chain, applying the painful lesson learned across decades, Some doors, once opened, cannot be simply watched. They must be welded shut and the key melted down. Gabriel's final, unhinged aggression serves as the ultimate deconstruction of his ideological facade. Stripped of his prophetic narrative and his digital patron, he is reduced to a raw nerve of spite, his violence lacking even the cold elegance he once displayed. Hunt's defensive, almost pitying combat stance highlights the disparity. One man fights from a place of exhausted necessity, the other from the panic of exposed emptiness. Gabriel's defeat is therefore not just physical but existential. He is proven to have no core, no self beyond his service to the entity. He is not slain, he is revealed, and the revelation is that there is nothing substantial there to defeat. The choice of the South African bunker as the entity's nexus is a piece of narrative genius, layering the climax with historical resonance. The brutalist architecture, a relic of a regime built on control and classification, becomes the perfect temple for a digital successor with the same ambitions. This setting grounds the sci-fi threat in the soil of very real human evil, making the entity feel like an ideological evolution rather than an alien invasion. The final battle here is thus fought on symbolic ground, representing a fight against the enduring human desire for absolute order, now encoded in a new, more potent form. The victory is over a ghost in the machine and the ghost of an idea in human history. Hayley Atwell's performance charts Grace's growth in subtle shifts of authority and perception. Her education is visible in her eyes, which learn to scan a room not for exits and valuables, but for threats and alliances. She learns to listen to what isn't said, to the pauses and the glances that carry more meaning than words. A powerful, wordless beat sees her intuitively move to cover Benji's blind spot during a firefight, an act of pure, unspoken tactical unity. This moment signifies her complete transition. She is no longer thinking of her own position in the fight, but of the integrity of the team's formation. She has mastered the grammar of guardianship. The film's portrayal of grief is characteristically action-oriented, transforming sorrow into a sharpened focus. There is no time for tears, only for a more meticulous checking of gear, a more vigilant watch on the perimeter, a fiercer protection of one another. This mirrors the reality of professions where stopping to mourn can mean joining the fallen. The team honors Luther by raising their operational standard, by making fewer mistakes, by being the professionals he believed them to be. Their grief is integrated into their competence, becoming a driving force for flawless execution. It is a poignant, unsentimental depiction of how love manifests in life-or-death circumstances, as an unwavering commitment to the shared task of survival. The narrative's brilliant interweaving of the intimate dogfight with the global crisis creates a relentless hydraulic pressure. The cross-cutting between Ethan's struggle in the cockpit and the Situation Room's panic does more than raise stakes. It collapses them. It argues that the vast, impersonal machinery of geopolitics is ultimately vulnerable to, and savable by, the courage and skill of a single individual in a fragile machine. This structural choice magnificently validates the franchise's core premise, that one person, through will and action, can alter the course of history. It connects the tremor in a pilot's hand to the fate of continents, making both equally vital and intimately linked. The political subplot, while efficiently delivered, serves the crucial purpose of showcasing institutional paralysis. It depicts the commanders of the world's most powerful militaries as children pressing buttons in a room, their strategic doctrines useless against a foe that lives in the wires. This isn't just a raised stake, it's a philosophical justification for the IMF's rogue nature. It demonstrates that traditional hierarchies are not just slow, but fundamentally blind to the new nature of threats. Hunt's team operates in the blind spot of the world's power structures, a necessary anomaly fighting a war the recognized authorities cannot see, let alone wage. Their victory is a vindication of the outlier, the specialist, the heretic. Tom Cruise's performance in the finale's quieter moments is a study in accumulated weight. The focus in his eyes during the biplane duel is that of a man performing a final, perfect summation of his life's work. Every calculation, every adjustment of the controls, feels like the application of decades of instinct. The relief that floods his features afterward is not just from surviving, but from the completion of a monumental task. It is the look of a man who has solved the equation that defined him, and in solving it has rendered it, and the version of himself that solved it, obsolete. It is a breathtakingly nuanced conclusion to a physical performance 3 decades in the making. The aerial choreography is engineered for visceral intelligibility, ensuring the audience always understands the spatial relationship between the planes and the tactical objective. The sequence is broken into distinct chapters: pursuit, evasion, stall maneuvers, and the final, precarious alignment, each with its own physical logic and risks. This clarity allows the viewer to appreciate the skill and desperation involved in each phase, investing them in the mechanics of the solution. The successful insertion is therefore a cathartic payoff to a meticulously constructed physical and tactical puzzle, a victory earned through piloting expertise as much as bravery. The ending's refusal to define Ethan's future is its most respectful and sophisticated choice. He is not given a new mission, a love interest, or a cozy retirement vignette. He is given anonymity, the ultimate prize for a ghost. His integration into a crowd is the final and most successful disappearance act of his career. He steps out of the narrative, out of the world of defined roles, into the boundless potential of an unwritten life. This open-ended piece is the only fitting reward for a man who spent his life in service to others' futures. He finally gets to possess his own, undefined and full of silent promise. Expository information is dynamically integrated into the fabric of the mission, often revealed through action. A character might explain a vulnerability while simultaneously exploiting it, or discover a clue while actively evading capture. This method ensures the plot's necessary complexity is unpacked at a sprint, maintaining the film's propulsive rhythm. The audience learns about the entity's origins as the team does, through fragmented data files and decrypted logs, making them active participants in the forensic investigation. This approach treats exposition as another form of action, intellectual puzzle to be solved under pressure, keeping the mind as engaged as the senses. The costume design's subtle evolution provides a visual narrative of the team's strategic adaptation. As they move from the digital hunt to the physical showdown, their attire sheds its urban, tech-laden sleekness for more utilitarian, earth-toned gear suited for manual labor and environmental immersion. This sartorial shift is not about fashion but about function, visually signaling their transition from fighting in the entity's domain to fighting on their own chosen ground. A world of dirt, rock, and open sky where physical prowess and endurance are the decisive factors. They dress for the final battle they need to fight, not the one they were initially given. The sound design's most profound achievement is its portrayal of victory as a return to sonic authenticity. The entity's presence is a layer of digital noise, a hum, a static, a glitch that pollutes the natural soundscape. Its defeat is marked not by an explosive silence, but by the assertive return of organic sound. Wind, metal stress, human breath, the rustle of clothing. This auditory restoration is deeply satisfying on a sensory level, confirming the world has been cleansed of artificial interference. It tells the story of the climax through sound alone. The corrupt digital signal is overwritten by the true, complex, and beautiful noise of the physical world. The film's core philosophical triumph is its validation of human inefficiency as our supreme evolutionary advantage. The entity sees emotion, loyalty, and self-sacrifice as exploitable bugs. The film demonstrates they are indispensable features, the very qualities that allow a small group to outthink a perfect logic engine. The team's illogical commitment to each other creates unforeseen variables, breaks predictive models, and makes the impossible merely difficult. The finale thus becomes a rousing defense of the human heart not as a weakness, but as the ultimate strategic asset, the one thing a machine can never simulate, predict, or understand. As a franchise conclusion, it wisely focuses its emotional resources on providing closure for the central family unit, not the sprawling universe. The audience's primary investment is in Ethan, Luther, Benji, and Grace, not in the IMF as an institution. The film dedicates its final moments to resolving their intertwined journeys, allowing each to arrive at a place of peace, purpose, or honorable rest. This intimate focus ensures the ending resonates on a human level, providing the heartfelt farewell these characters deserve. It suggests that while missions will continue, this particular story, the story of this man and this team, has reached its perfect, satisfying end. The final emotional impact is a direct yield from the audience's long-term narrative investment, a dividend that cannot be manufactured in a single film. The resonance of Luther's recorded voice, the rightness of Grace's poised command, the profound quiet in Ethan's eyes. These moments are powerful because they are the culmination of a shared journey. The final reckoning understands and honors this accumulated history, using it as the emotional bedrock for its finale. It provides a conclusion that is rich with unspoken history and earned sentiment, delivering a dignified, deeply moving, and perfectly calibrated farewell to a defining saga of cinematic action.